Good evening and welcome to Whiskey Wednesday. Tonight, we're going to be talking about how to think like an innovator. It's a Dory Clark article that was written in Entrepreneur magazine a few years ago. I think it's still relevant today. And the Ninja will be joining us to have this discussion. I'm your host, Dr. Dan Ford, and this is EchelonOrchid.
Guess who's back?
Ninja, what's going on, my friend?
Hello, Dr. Dan Ford. How are you?
I am doing good. I forgot to put on the other camera. I'm going to blame this on the fact that it's cold here in the studio. I'm still I can't wait till it gets to be a little bit warmer, so that I can kind of get this studio built out to where it'll be conducive to no matter what particular season it's in. But it is freezing in here at the moment, the frozen tundra of Indiana. But outside of that, how are the days in North Carolina treating you?
Warm. Treat me well, brother. Going quite well down here in the South. I found this book, man. I haven't bought it yet because, well, I can't bring myself to buy it, but I think I'm going to. I'm going to start reading it tonight. I've often wondered, like, culturally, why the South is so different than the North. And I had an encounter with a gentleman months and months and months ago at, of all places, an Irish pub here. And it's actually an authentic Irish pub. It's one of the only few ones I've found outside of Ireland that's pretty authentic. And we had gotten in this long conversation about how going back to the Scots and the Welsh and the Irish and their relationship with England proper and government and shit like that. And he'd made this comment that, especially as a Scotsman, which he was, that his people were, more or less ungovernable. And that was a lot of the tension even to current times. And that stuck with me. And so I happened
ungovernable. That's it's a great word there.
Right. Okay. So it stuck in my mind because it was a really unique way to say it. And like a half hour stop at a pub turned into like 6 hours of sitting there drinking with this guy. Okay. No,
Right,
I'm not really exaggerating by much. And the other day, man, I was reading something and I happened upon a link to a book that was referencing the cultural difference of the South and why it is so culturally different, despite slavery, despite the Civil War, like going back to the first settlement from Europe. And I hadn't realized this, that it was actually the Scots, the Welsh, and the Irish that settled the South. And so I found this book that I'm going to paraphrase the title because no, fuck that. I'm going to quote it. Hold on one second, man. It is called, and just so nobody thinks I'm making it up, here it is. It is called Cracker Culture, Celtic Ways in the Old South. And at first I thought it was a joke, but sure enough, this dude, he's not alive anymore. Dr. Grady McWhitney was a legit historian. And based on the abstract, what I've basically kind of taken away from this is that the South is the South and it continues to be the South and it always will be the South because culturally it's fucking ungovernable.
Hey, your former colleague and one of our only a person I've met a few times, Dan Manson, just chimed in saying hello.
Oh, hey, Dan Manson.
So he's watching there through LinkedIn Learning. It's interesting. We'll get back to that part. But on StreamYard, it tells you like, hey, where live viewers at and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't report back from LinkedIn. So
interesting. Yeah, I've never streamed to LinkedIn. That's interesting. You're doing it. I wonder how that's going to work out.
Yeah, and our good friend Dr. Barker saying hello.
Hello there.
In. You are both welcome to come on anytime and talk some leadership and innovation. Who knows what other crazy stuff might happen? You never know.
I almost feel like I should watch what I have to say.
Why start now?
Yeah, right. I mean, anybody that thinks I'm going to do that's crazy.
I mean, the great part about our relationship and the show that we've been basically doing. I mean, we've just kind of continued this life in tech. this is the same conversation we would literally be having if we were together at a bar or over coffee or whatever. Like, this is the same conversation we would be having. Like, this is just the stuff that we talk about.
It's interesting to me, man, because several times now within the last, let's say 5 years, it's probably been 3 or 4 times it's been brought up in my presence in a formal way. You and I have talked about it. I've talked about it with my friend Franco. I just finished that simulation theory book with, and some other people. It's come up that, given our technology, even if you never make it public, why not record your conversations? Because you never know what it's going to turn into.
Yeah, you don't, and it's literally why we do this. I go back, like, I'm actually looking for like an intern right now to kind of help with the show. I want them to go back through, kind of write a blog on what they heard. I want to teach them how to do some SEO, how monetization works, how ads work with this, how you can start pinpointing demographics, and then also kind of help with, hey, here's how you do websites, here's how you do this, here's how you do this. For those people that want to get in the marketing field, I once, I used to sleep on marketing. Think I was very biased in a negative way towards marketing earlier in my career because I worked for product companies, and these product companies basically just lied about what we did, and I would be the one having to go in there. I'm like, we don't do that. So I was very, very biased at that point in a negative way. So it took me a little while, and actually it was during my MBA that I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what real marketing people do. Like, it's all about data and how you can derive different things about people that will interact with you. So, I mean, it fit right into science, So I'm like, ooh. So I took basically every class I could in marketing at that point.
To me, it's like sales, right? Where unfortunately the majority of sales, like the majority of marketing, sucks. And you don't get exposed to the people that are actually really competent at it, that treat it like the science that it is, sales and marketing in particular, to your point. And man, I'll tell you, there's been several times in my life where I've thought, I need to know more about that. I wonder if that is the next jump. Because especially marketing, man, and especially marketing in modern times, it's all data driven. It's all data driven, man. And even if you look at like in tech, or like even when we were at Silent Circle, right? I don't remember that dude's name that came in from the Bay Area that was doing like the storyboards and developing the app store with the developer community.
Yeah, the British guy. I don't remember his name off the top of my head.
I can't think of his name right now, man. But there's a lot of like A/B testing, sentiment analysis, and focus group based research that is legitimate science. It really is. It doesn't get published, right? But it's still legitimate science.
Yeah, absolutely it is. So now I kind of sidetracked our conversation with some of
that's a good segue.
Our colleagues there, but going back to the people that started colonizing in a way, or being attracted to the states, colonies, and things like that. It doesn't surprise me that they're coming from like Scotland and places like that because, well, they were being persecuted. So, they came here.
I that's obviously true historically. I also look at it, and this is where I think the segue might be. You tell me. They were looking to innovate for themselves.
Oh, of course, yeah.
They're looking to pioneer something. And what better way to do that than to go where nobody's gone before, so to speak, to quote Star Trek, and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely true.
And I think that the temperament that drives somebody to do that is by its nature ungovernable.
Yeah, and I think to me, like, even the word like governing, and I haven't looked up the definition, but when I hear that governance, things like that, I say, oh, you're looking to put constraints on this.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, in government should be constraint, but it's supposed to be the constraint of the publicly elected officials, not a restraint on its subjects, the people, which really shouldn't even be subjects. That was, in a monarchy, right? But you can't innovate if you have restraints. It literally is the opposite. Should be no restraint. Like otherwise, that's like I tell my young people, imagine what you can do if you had unlimited resources. What could you accomplish? And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, now you've imagined it, you can do it. Like if you can think it, if you can go, you can do that. You just got to figure out the resources necessary. And that kind of gets into what Dory Clark's article, which for those that don't know Dory, I've never met Dory, and I'm probably brutalizing the name. I'm not even sure if I'm saying her name correctly. I think it's Dory, Dorie. But I think she's brilliant. She teaches in the business program at Duke. I think it's pronounced Fuqua. I don't know. I've never actually heard someone really say it, but it was a university that I almost went to. It was actually my second choice, so I can't hate on the Blue Devils there. And if I had gone, I would have probably had her as a professor, which would have been kind of cool. And maybe one day I'll actually get to interact with her. But this was several years ago. This article in Entrepreneur magazine. I think I put the link in the show description. And we're just going to go down some of the ideas. Like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, yeah, four ideas on how to develop like your own breakthroughs. And I think this is so relevant, and especially with, I would say at least a little bit more in how you got into technology versus how I got into technology. Because you didn't start a professional career in technology. Came a little bit after the fact. So for me, I always had technology in the house. Like I don't remember a time when there wasn't a computer. I don't really remember a time when there wasn't the internet. I kind of knew I was going to be in technology my entire childhood. Like this is what I wanted to do. I didn't know what. Like I thought I was going to be a programmer. Like my dad. And I'm not a good application developer. I can break code. I suck at coding, but that's why. But I know enough to know that I'm not good at that and get someone else to do it. It's the same reason why I don't want to do plumbing. I can do it, but I'd rather it be done right. I want to make sure there's not going to be a leak after that plumbing has been installed. Same with code. But you didn't start off that way. Like you went through a different transition to getting there. And I bring this up because what Dory says in that first, bullet in there, your past experiences and trainings in the field of which you don't currently work is a great way of having a breakthrough idea because you had an experience that had nothing to do with technology.
Yeah. If you're asking me if I agree with it, I do. And observationally, I find it to be more often than not true. And I think that's true because of the divergent thinking that's required to truly innovate. Now, interestingly enough, I don't know that I would agree that entrepreneurs are inherently innovative.
I don't necessarily. No, I don't. That's it. Just has to be Entrepreneur magazine, like not about entrepreneurs.
No, I get it. I get that, man. But the article starts off talking about entrepreneurs and then attempts to link it to innovation. But anyway,
and this is another interesting thing. Like I think you and I have had this conversation. I think it's an absolute travesty when we had the Equifax breach, when everyone was basically shitting all over the people in charge of technology because they didn't have a computer science degree. I'm like, I don't know that I necessarily would want them to necessarily have that. They had a degree, which tells me they know how to formulate a plan and pass, a bunch of curriculum. And they translated this like no one got that high in Equifax by being an idiot. Okay, it's just I don't believe that. I actually find it very refreshing when I see people in technology that did not come from a computer science undergrad. I enjoy talking to them. They figured out also what they didn't want to do, and then the technology became their passion. So I'd love to seek out people that didn't come to technology through the traditional means. Not that the traditional means can't also be there as well, but I just find it fascinating, maybe because that's not the way I got here.
Well, but I think both paths have their own merits in and of themselves, and it's really what you're looking for. Like, look, man, if I want to hire somebody to maintain what I have, I want somebody from that traditional pipeline because they're going to do things according to the traditional way. If I want somebody to come in and solve a novel problem or come up with a novel product idea, I don't want somebody from the traditional pipeline because they're in the traditional pipeline. They're going to think a traditional way.
Yeah, absolutely. And,
I mean,
there's merit in both. It really depends on.
well, what are you trying to do?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's what it depends on. And I can say this with a high degree of confidence. I taught at the #1 private school in the Southeast in the computer science department. Not a single one of us had an undergrad degree in computer science. Not a single one.
Yeah.
No,
It doesn't surprise me at all. Uh, you know, it's kind of breaks away a little bit from the topic, but what do you believe learning is going to look like in the next 10 years? Like, do you think these universities are going to take a significant drop in enrollment due to things like LinkedIn Learning and Udemy and things like that? Or, like what do you think? Or do you think that they're going to drop the tuition to a rate that would be reasonable for other people to kind of compete with those like LinkedIn Learning type things? Because you could literally develop an undergrad, even a graduate program course by just doing LinkedIn Learning. We've got quizzes and stuff like that. You'll know how well you do it. I mean, you may not have projects, but you can learn quite a bit.
yeah, I don't think that the university as a concept has exclusive rights to information the way that it did. Yeah, and actually, if you want your answer, what you need to look at is the Catholic Church coming out of medieval times. That's the correct analog to analyze.
Have they yet?
Have they what?
Has the Catholic Church truly come out of medieval times yet?
Well, the priesthood having exclusive control or constraint or governance, if you prefer,
Yep.
over information and learning. Yeah, no, that cat's been long out of the bag, dude.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I just meant like I feel like they're still kind of thinking they act in many ways as if they are still in the medieval
Yeah,
times.
of course they do.
Yeah.
I mean, of course they do, dude. Of course they do. Now, to your point, if we agree, which we should, because it's historical, that for a long period of our history, human history, a priest caste had exclusive control over knowledge, reading and writing primarily, right? And that went away and got disseminated down to the general citizenry. Uh, the churches didn't collapse; they're still around. I mean, Christianity's not gone away in any way, shape, or form. Um, so I don't think the university as a concept is going to go away. So then, to your question, how might it evolve? Well, things like Udemy, Coursera, MOOCs, if you will, have been around for a period of time now within the concept, within the churn of technology, right? MOOCs got built and really haven't changed too much. What they can never do that a 2-year and a 4-year do to varying degrees of success is for you and I, or people that are innovative, you can do a MOOC and learn equivalent to what you would learn in a 4-year, let's say, right? And the outcome is going to be the same. But that's for that temperament because you're able to self-organize. For the general public that can't self-organize, they need that structure given to them so that they can follow it. I don't know that Udemy, Coursera, MOOCs, Open Learning, LinkedIn Learning, what the fuck ever, is ever going to be able to replicate that.
No, I think it definitely would require an individual to have very good internal discipline, and not everyone does. And so, like, I will say the difference between like internal discipline and external discipline comes in like this. Like, we can see this in today's world of business, people that work remote. People that are successful working remotely have very good internal discipline. They don't need an organization to tell them what to do. They know what to do. They do it. They seek out things to do. And there's nothing wrong with people that need to be in an office structure. They find comfort in the organization and being in that brick and mortar and applying the external discipline to them. Both have merits, right? I think it's one of those things, at least, the way I look at it is we no longer have just one popular means to achieve similar results. And I think that's quite refreshing, because before, even though like we've been around long enough, CPT Nuggets has been around for quite a long time. I still have my people using it. It's still great. It's gotten tremendously better. Like the content on a lot of these computer-based training type programs is infinitely better. And Dr. Barker chimed in saying, in order to survive, the model will have to change. I just wonder to what extent. I think that might, I don't think it's going to be a bad thing. I think I think we will still. I think if it were me, I'd be looking at universities almost like think tanks and incubators.
Yeah, I don't know, man. The way I've started to think about it especially the last couple of years, is there's a material difference between training and education. And so, the purpose and mission of a 4-year has long been to educate a populace. The mission of a 2-year is to train a citizen. Those aren't the same missions. I think we're at a point, particularly with technology, take programming, and I almost said it, and I'll say it, as a trade, because I look at it as a trade. To do a trade does not require education, it requires training. Okay. And so I think part of the question for me is, to what extent is a 4-year in servicing training a citizen acting as a 2-year? And so if I'm a citizen that wants to be part of the educated populace, where do I go if a 4-year is not giving that to me? And I think that's the evolution, because it may not be a graduate degree, right? But what is it? Because it's not. The 4 years aren't providing it for the most part, because the liberal arts has been shit on to the point where it's eroded. And I'll point this out. I'll get on my fucking high horse and get on and say this. The medieval church went through this, right? There's a book written by a monk called Metalogic, and in which he discussed the population's essentially rebellion against the liberal arts as being given down by the church, and their focus on what was called the mechanical arts, which now we would think of as engineering, right? And how to resolve that dilemma. So it's not like our species hasn't gone through this hardship before. We have, and look at where we're at. I think we're right back at the same spot. And so I think that's it. So, like, for me as an academic, if the 4-year wasn't giving me an education, it was training me to perform a trade, a 21st century trade, albeit, right? Where do I go and how do I get an education? Well, that goes to your point about, you call it motivation, I'll call it, you call it discipline, I'll call it motivation. We're saying the same thing. It's intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation.
Fair enough.
If I'm intrinsically motivated or disciplined, then I'm going to seek that out myself. And I think that's where MOOCs come in.
Yeah, sure.
It's not a replacement for the 4-year. It's how I can become educated after the 4-year.
Yeah, and I think, so I'm looking at this in a couple of different ways. And one of those ways, as an employer, I am trying to find creative ways of bringing in entry-level talent that is not necessarily traditional, because I believe that I this, and others that know me get this. I am a huge believer in internships and paid. Hey, they're doing work. I'm paying them. I may not be able to pay them like bigger, like a Facebook or a Google, but I'm going to pay you. Like I'm going to pay you the equivalent of what any of our other entry level like positions in the organization pay, which is not great, but it's not minimum wage. I don't remember what it is at my current employer. It might be $15 an hour or something like that. But hey, you're getting an experience. If you do well, I'm going to keep paying you. You finish doing whatever you're doing, whatever that internship is over. Then I'm going to hire you on to a true now entry level professional position, which is not $15 an hour. It's much higher than that. And so I'm trying to find ways in which, for those that are graduating high school that may not go to a traditional university, what if they do a Udemy? Like, how can I really equate? All right, you've done this training on your own, which to me, I'm like, that's awesome. I can interview them to figure out whether or not they have the knowledge, if they've retained that training, and to be able to make that knowledge actionable. I can figure that out. I think a lot of companies would benefit from trying to go down that route rather than just go, well, you're in a 4-year institution, I'm just going to hire you. Because there's a lot of people that just talk, oh, you don't have to have a degree, you don't have to have these certifications, you don't have to have. Well, what are you doing to promote that? Because I'm not seeing it. I have yet, and I am sure there's an organization out there that does this. I just don't know of any. And I'm trying to figure out how to do that as well. I'm willing. Hey, that's why I put out there, throw out internships and see who applies. I don't care what college they go to. I don't care if they did everything through Udemy, LinkedIn Learning, whatever. We're going to talk about a skill set, and I'm going to find out whether or not you've achieved a certain level of knowledge to make it actionable or not. And if you did, you're an intern. Let's see what you do. Now let's see what happens when we put you in the game.
Right.
But I wonder if one of these universities will eventually catch on and go, oh, well, you've put in 250 learning hours, training hours. That's the equivalent of 1 year's worth of credits. And
yeah, that's happening.
Is that with like a LinkedIn Learning type thing? I don't know. You know better than I.
I've not personally experienced it with LinkedIn Learning, but conceptually, like when I went to a traditional 4-year liberal arts undergrad, even then there was the idea of work experience for credit, and that idea has ballooned because of the very thing we're talking about. I think a neat, innovative idea might be. So, have you heard of a company called Credly? Credly does badging.
Okay,
and so
it sounds familiar, but I could be thinking of Calendly too. Who knows?
Yeah. All Credly does is sit as a broker, where when you go to Udemy, Coursera, what the fuck ever, right, and you do whatever, those organizations link into Credly, and Credly awards you with a badge that demonstrates that you did something.
Okay.
Right. Okay. And so it's somewhere conceptually, a badge sits somewhere between a certification and a degree. Right. It's not as training oriented as a certification, but it's not as broad as an education, evidence through a degree. Right. So it's somewhere in between conceptually.
Sure.
I think a neat innovation would be to hijack that pipeline and orient it on the other side of the pathway. So right now, it's linked into more of a training mechanism. So if I want to demonstrate that I can code in JavaScript, I can take a MOOC JavaScript course, and then if that platform is linked into Credly, I get a badge. And then if I come to you as a potential employee, I can put that on my resume, right? That, oh, here's my Credly badge for this training. I think a neat thing that nobody's doing right now might be to try to link it to the other side, which is, here's a unique problem that came from some other platform like Kaggle is a good one for machine learning and AI. that's well renowned for having really hard real world problems that people do competitions to solve. Well, if I engage in a Kegel competition and I come up with a novel solution to a novel problem, that's not training, that's education. And if I can get a badge for that and I can back it up with my GitHub repo, now as a candidate, I can demonstrate my ability to be innovative. And nobody's doing that right now. I've never seen that. That's a neat thing for a university to try to do.
Yeah, I dig that. I mean, especially for people that are, developers. I mean, GitHub is, I mean, I think it's still free. I mean, I know Microsoft bought it, so it'll probably be bastardized at some point.
Oh no, they've actually left it for the most part alone. It's fucking awesome. But look, man, that concept could work for anything. Like, take it back to marketing. If I want to be a marketing professional, what better way to demonstrate my ability to innovate fresh, novel marketing things, material, let's call it, by engaging in some type of activity that simulates what I would do as a professional, archive that in some type of fixed portfolio asset, like GitHub for code, right? Because you can put anything in GitHub. It doesn't have to be code. You can put anything in there.
Yeah.
And then link that to a badge that more or less in some way certifies that I am the one that did that. Put it on a blockchain. Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Oh, blockchain. So, because you mentioned, I know, blockchain and AI for me is like, saying to you that cybersecurity is like an immune system. It's just no, it's not. But it's interesting. Go back to that AI thing. So I now have gotten to this point with vendors when they tell me they've got AI. I'm like, can you send me any actual documents that would prove that this is AI and not just machine learning? And if you can, then I'll have a meeting with you. If not, then I don't want to have a meeting. Every single time the vendor will reply, oh, we absolutely can. This person's available these times to talk to you about this stuff. Let me know which works for you. I'm like, no. Before I meet with you, I want to read what you have to say. That's actually showing that it's AI and not like, neural networks. Like, if you're just giving me neural networks, that's not AI. It's just more machine learning. I still have to have a person that's going to eventually be at the other end to validate some of the stuff. It might help my decisions better, but it's not making these decisions just automatically, or taking in that data and being able to apply it in other ways. Like, it's not like a human learning system. But so far, I've yet to have a vendor send me any information. I'm still waiting.
Don't hold your breath, dude.
I won't, because they're not like, I just go like, there's a tremendous amount of research going on. There are some companies that are doing AI, but most of it is just marketing words, which gets back to that stuff. Stop saying something's AI. Machine learning is a tremendous amount of use cases. I mean, when you just talk about like they call it auto decisioning when it comes to like credit decisions for like a loan or something like that. It's not an auto decision. It's utilizing things like, K nearest neighbor, or and we talked about this during the beginning of COVID back in the day. Hey, this is valid stuff, but it's just regression algorithms and plenty of valid things. But don't say it's AI. Like, say what it is, because then there might be some valid use cases for what you're doing that still could be different. But I already have auto decisioning for credit decisions. This already exists. I don't need another one.
Well, saying you have AI and what you have is machine learning, to me, is like saying masturbation is sex.
Well, there goes my monetization on this episode. If only I'm gonna eventually, like, when I have you on, I'm gonna have to figure out how to do like a delay, so I can hit like the delay, like bleep out button, put you like, what's his name, Baba Booey with Howard Stern back then, like constantly like having to do that stuff.
I don't hear you disagreeing with me.
I can't disagree. Because it's true. It might be a my current CFO would absolutely love that. She utilizes certain analogies like that as well.
I wasn't quite sure what you were going to say there. So
no, like the analogy works, quite well. A result may be similar, but the the process is completely different.
yeah. Well,
actually, I don't even know that the result is the same, but
well, I mean, it is, and to the point, like
in one context, not necessarily in all.
Technically and scientifically, you can say that all machine learning is AI, and it is as a subset, as a field of study, but not all AI is machine learning.
Would you not say it's the other way around? Like machine learn, like all AI has machine learning concepts in it, but AI is not machine learning.
No. I would say it the way I said it. All machine learning is AI because machine learning is a subfield.
Oh, well, you're saying so. All right, so we're talking in this case. We'll use a much better analogy. All bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon.
Correct.
Whiskey is like the grandparent, and then you've got things that actually that's actually even worse. Correct. Example. It starts off as beer, and then from beer you have whiskey, bourbon, rye, scotch, blah 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 blah. So
yeah, but the marketing semantic is purposefully and deliberately used at the parent level rather than the sub level to confuse people, as if it's thinking for itself. Which that's what the layman, when they hear AI, thinks, but it's not. It's statistical automation, which is machine learning.
Right. Which is, it's got a tremendous amount of use cases. Like, don't, for any of those that are out there, I don't care if you at me, whatever. There's plenty of, like, we use machine learning all the time. It's just not what I would say is AI to where I have true intelligence. Machine learning is just, it's got a thing it can do. Like it's to do one particular task, one particular automation, not all of the automations.
Well, I think it stands to reason. Why not just fucking call it what it is? If you're using machine learning, why not say you have machine learning? Why call it AI and be ambiguous about it? Well, because you're being sneaky. That's why.
Yeah.
Hey, fair play to you, dude. Maybe you sell some appliances. Good for you. Good on you, bro. But I mean, you ain't fooling me.
No, and that's why I go, hey, I still haven't gotten any vendor to send me anything that says this is AI. Don't send me ones that have sent stuff. Hey, it's neural networks mainly, and that's awesome. I already have that.
Right. See, and I think that's part of innovation. Innovation is necessarily unconstrained by semantics. This goes back to like governance, right?
Yeah.
Like if you really have a problem that requires innovation to solve, then you can't be constrained by what things are called or what they are. You have to be free to make that up as you go.
Yeah. Which I would go, when we go back to Dory's article, this I think is, so in her last bullet in here, in terms of like, developing your own breakthrough ideas for innovation. She says, what trend is most threatening to your industry right now, and what opportunities does it present? Well, I think the biggest threat to my industry happens to be the overuse of, basically these terms like AI when it's not, because now you confuse the entire market. What's good, what's not, right? They try to be things that they're not. And how could a young engineer that doesn't have a tremendous amount of experience understand the differences? You start training them on the wrong path. I think that's a huge thing. Just in technology, I think that's a huge mistake. The rebranding of things, like I think zero trust it's just a rebranded term, whereas it should always have been that. What I believe they should be saying is that, hey, you should always have been not trusting anything, including the device. Like, you should authenticate the device. You should authenticate the user. You should ensure that the user and the device seem to be in the same general location. And you should believe that the data transmission in which they're coming from is also not trusted. Like, don't trust anything. Well, I kind of go, well, yeah, calling it zero trust is just a rebranded word, and it makes things, I believe, a little bit difficult for people who aren't specifically in the industry to understand. So I have to answer these kind of questions to the board. They don't understand even when I say device authentication, but all they read in different articles from the Financial Times of the world. Oh, are we implementing zero trust? Like, why aren't we using this vendor for zero trust? I'm like, well, I don't believe in just one vendor. I believe in you should have multiple vendors and you can do the same thing in a different way. I don't want to be locked in. I don't want to be vendor locked in. I don't like to give vendors any control over or leverage over my future technology decisions.
Well, see, as much as I'll say that innovation requires a lack of constraint, at the same time, it requires precision. And so, like, imagine trying to come up with an innovative way to architect a network, but being confused between what layer 2 and layer 3 are. Right? That's the AI and machine learning semantic. And imagine if we just collectively decided as an industry that, fuck it, good enough, dude. Semantics don't matter. It doesn't matter. Right? I mean, you in that kind of ambiguity, you actually cannot innovate because nothing is clear. Right? Like, and to put it into a real context, that I just finished a book that focused on this part of our history as a country, and specifically around innovation, how this group became the group it was, and what they did is how we developed our atomic weapons in World War II. The problem set was very precisely defined, and the people that were engaging in the innovation were not constrained in how they innovated, but there was precision in what was involved.
Well, I don't know how there was any precision. It's just alien technology that was given to us. Like, so, I mean, it's pretty simple. There are people that think that.
There's people that think the fucking earth is flat too, dude. Like,
yeah, they do. I still can't get over that one. Like,
yeah, I told this to somebody the other day. We were talking, and I said, you know what? In my 30s, my late 30s, I really was obsessed, and you know this, with this idea that I could get everybody off the planet.
Yeah.
And now that I'm into my mid 40s, I realize how bad of a fucking idea that is.
Well, I told you that when you first came up with it. I'm like, I want some people to stay here. Just saying, like, they can go. We can leave, they can stay. It's perfectly fine. But it is there's I love how now everyone's going on all these different memes about, hey, all you people that thinking this conspiracy theorists were just conspiracy theories. I'm like, dude, because you said one particular piece of information, I could close my eyes and throw darts at a dartboard. I'm eventually going to hit that dartboard.
Well, broken clock is right twice a day, dude. I mean,
right? Because they're all doing this like right now with like Putin in Ukraine. I'm like Putin's been trying to recreate the Soviet Union in a different way ever since he left Berlin.
Yeah.
That's this is not a surprise. But getting back to that innovation, the other piece here, which I actually really like this, and this gets back into why I'm so fascinated with people who started off on a different career path but ended up in technology, which is, what would people in a completely different industry or discipline say about what you're currently doing, and what would they think? How would you explain it to them? And what do you think they would say? I think that's a great question, We did this when we were at Silent Circle and we started talking about intellectual property. Like, all right, let's figure out some patentable ideas. Let's just throw stuff out there. Let's see what sticks. And we had one, young analyst come up with some really crazy things, but it did at least in the beginning where I'm like, whoa, that's a little bit out there. We eventually did get to something. But you want some of those, like, give me your craziest ideas. And I would say, like, give me the craziest idea that you can actually say with a straight face.
Yeah, see, and that, I think we're kind of, first of all, 100% agree. And I think that's why the creativity in the innovation should not be constrained, but the in this case, the expression of the innovation needs to be precise.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's not grounded in anything. There's no way to situate it and make sense of it. And that's what some of what Mika was saying in that first meeting.
Hey, I didn't mention a name.
Oh, I will, because I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's not that our ideas were bad. They just weren't grounded in anything that was rational, so you couldn't make sense of it.
Right. And I'd like to say at work right now, like, how are we going to be the first credit union on Mars?
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, people were like, oh, this is crazy. It's crazy. Well, why is it crazy? Like, Elon Musk says he wants to go to Mars. So in our lifetime, we will likely see someone on Mars. They might need access to funds. So why couldn't we be the first credit? Like, literally, like, thinking that, well, it sounded crazy. If you're not thinking that far into the future, well, then you'll never get there. Right now, we talk about, hey, how are we going to expand our geographic footprint on Long Island? Well, why constrain yourself just to Long Island? How are we going to get off of Long Island? How are we going to get out of New York? How are we going to get out of the Mid-Atlantic? How are we going to get out of the East Coast? How are we going to get off the United States? How are we going to get out of Earth? It's going to happen. And so what are the necessary action items that are required to make that occur? Like, first off, from a credit union perspective, it's your charter. We would need an interplanetary, charter. I'm not sure if that doesn't exist today. So we would have to have, the NCUA amongst other international credit union associations agree to that this could exist. But hey, why not apply for that charter now? Make them do it. We could be the first one and just,
Well, see, and I think that's part of the precision is the more proximal or the nearer that innovation has to be realized, the more precise it has to be. Mm-hmm. The farther out it is, the less precision you need, because you're just setting a rough target out there that, okay, if the path happens to align this way and we're at this juncture and this trigger happens at that point, 20, 200, 2,000 years, it doesn't matter. Then incrementally we'll become more precise as we head towards that. But for now, let's just say, yeah, we need this charter so that if and when there is an opportunity, we're in the right position to take advantage of that opportunity.
Absolutely. The precision right now in my example is, how are we going to expand further on Long Island?
Right.
Like, I am very, precise in this aspect. We need to expand on Long Island because that's where our charter allows us to be. So how do we get a bigger footprint on Long Island, which is just 2 counties in New York?
Right. And the steps to do that should be like ultra mega precise. The steps to create that charter for interstellar credit unions doesn't need precision at all. It just needs an idea.
Right. Because nothing right now, as far as I know, exists to even allow that. It would take a lot, I would imagine. But I don't know, because I can't be very precise on it because there's not a roadmap on how to do it.
Well, there's too much fog of war. There's no way to see it. It's just an innovative idea that you plan out there, and maybe one day it happens, maybe one day it doesn't. I don't know, man. But yeah. And see, and I think that's where the value of asking somebody that's not in your silo what they think about your siloed innovation is meaningful.
And it's funny because we had some of these kind of discussions with our board, not too long ago, and I had said, like, our biggest challenge is most people don't even know what a credit union is, and so they don't necessarily even understand the value of what a credit union brings to communities. Now, and not all credit unions are the same. I mean, I believe they should have a similar philosophy, but they are quite different in terms of their philosophies than your traditional financial institution and what we're seeing in a lot of fintechs. So, because they believe that the thing that is most important to prospective members is that we're a credit union. And what comes to find out, and this gets back to the data, what is most important to people about any institution, forget financial institution, they want to be able to align with the values of that organization. And so what's important to them is actually what the credit union does. Servicing communities, giving back, being really a figure in that community. So we had always said, is it more important to you as the board for us to tell people we're a credit union or to act like a credit union? To me, it's the actions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to lead because then I got to explain to people, well, what's a credit union? No, let's not lead with that. Let's lead with, we are invested in these communities. This is what we're doing to help current and future generations be better in financial literacy.
Right.
I feel and it gets back to like stuff that, do you want to be called an expert, or do you want people to know by your actions that you're an expert? I always like to believe, hey, I think it's better when someone else says I'm an expert than for me to say it.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you, man. It's real simple. I agree with you.
Well, you should. I am a doctor. You were there.
Hey. Yeah, I was there.
You were there. Let's see. What's this other one? I really like this one, and I use this one quite a bit with my current industry. Like, so what viewpoints could you bring into your current industry that are similar to other industries? And so I like to say with a credit union, because we're in the service industry, I believe it may not be food service and beverage service, but it's service. So why not take examples from those restaurants that have figured out a way to retain their servers, their line cooks, their sous chefs or chefs longer than anyone else in the same market? They're doing something. Let's take from them and bring that to our portion of the service. What things can we learn from that? Because they have a high turnover. So do our people that are on the front line of, whether it be help desk on the technology side, or people in the call center, or people in the branches. They all have very high turnover because they are constantly in that service mode, not like in the back office. So what things can we take from there and apply to us? And how did they solve it? It's probably going to be similar. So I love bringing in other industries that people don't necessarily think relate, but they're very tangential, and go, oh, well, this is similar. What can we learn from it? And actually bring them in to talk about how they do certain things. We tend to believe it. And I ran into this, I can't remember what kind of bias this is, but when I first was trying to get into financial services, it was, well, you've never been in financial services, how could you do it? Well, pretty sure I know how to secure something, and you've got something that needs to be secured. It really doesn't matter that you're a bank, a credit union, what have you, because bad actors still want to get in and compromise that. Bad actors want to get into data. Money is just data. Like, they're the same. It took me finding someone that actually knew that to be true in order to get into that. And now they're like, oh, well, you've never done manufacturing. Oh, you've never done this. It's all this. Technology is technology. you may have some idiosyncrasies in that specific industry with technology, but that's only like maybe 10%. Everyone else is still running Microsoft Office in some case, unfortunately, because I haven't convinced the world to go to Google Workspace. But, that's still my path. That's still my vision. But they get in. Is that confirmation bias? I don't think that's confirmation bias. That's what bias is that when you believe that only people in your industry or that are like you can actually do the same job? What confirmation bias is that?
I don't know. Where I come from, we call it being an asshole.
True. I also still agree, but thankfully I've already done the appeal process through YouTube in order to, hey, I've certified that, there's some foul language, but it's less than 10%. We're getting pretty close to every time you talk to get closer and closer to more than 10%.
Yeah, well, no, it's a group bias.
Group bias. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me that this far into the 21st century, people haven't caught on to technology is the great equalizer. Like, yeah, man, there is a percent difference. And in a lot of ways, I think that's an onboarding issue. It's not a technology issue. No different than what? Are you not going to hire the best CEO because that CEO's never been the CEO of a fintech or a manufacturing company?
You would be surprised. It's unfortunate because I think they could benefit from having a different, because they're going to ask questions that others haven't asked because they believe, hey, I already know the answer. These people have already been doing this, so I don't need to ask that. No, and that's why I love interns. That's why I love hiring junior employees. That's why I love mentoring younger people, because they're going to ask a question because they don't know the answer. And I believe they trust a little bit more, maybe somewhat through being naive because they don't yet, feel that asking a question might make them look bad amongst their peers, in which I kind of go, you should never feel that way. And if you do, shame on the management that's there, because they should never make you feel that way. They should be like, oh, well, here it is. Because I've had plenty of people when they'll say certain things that's a specific about financial services. I'm like, what's that? Like, one of the things was, I remember being at a Cornerstone event, and there's various types of financial institutions. And one of the, and I can't remember exactly which one it was, but it was like a, it was, I can't remember what it was now at this point, because I'd never heard of it before. And I'm like, well, what kind of bank is that? And people there that have been in the industry for kind of chuckled, like, can't believe you're asking this question. And I'm just kind of like, hey, you can chuckle and make fun of me all you want. I'm here to learn, and I don't understand what that type of financial institution is. What does that mean? And I think the younger people, they're not going to feel that self-conscious because they're used to being in a classroom setting, so they ask questions. At least that's what I believe. So I love them because they're going to ask a question, and maybe I haven't thought of that question yet, because they're going to apply it to their own life experiences, which are going to be completely different today than what it was when we grew up. So I love it.
Well, see, and I think that's a fundamental difference between an organization that's in franchise mode or maintenance mode versus an organization that wants to innovate. If you want to innovate, chances are you should absolutely be looking outside of your own silo or group. If you want a franchise, and that's not bad, maybe you're stable, then you ought to look within your silo. You don't want innovation.
It's interesting that you say that, because I gave a presentation today to our executive team. So that's everything for us. That's assistant vice president all the way to CEO. And I went, of course, with the best university ever, the University of Michigan, and the Michigan model of leadership and innovation. You've taken the test, but so we know what you are. There's a piece in the innovation code book that Jeff writes in this case, and it's actually very fascinating about the path of an organization through creative destruction.
Mm-hmm.
right? So as a startup, you fall into this artist category. Everyone's creative. You're coming up with these ideas. You're trying to move forward. So most people you have are big idea people. And then you really need people that can take those ideas and just punch everyone in the mouth, so to speak, and get out there into industry and get your product to market. And those are athletes. So now you move from, we've got great ideas. Now we need people who are going to take that idea and boom, which is like, our buddy Michel Ian Kansky, right? He is an athlete. Like, I don't care about process. I don't care about your feelings. I just want to get this done. And I think that's way, maybe in my mind, a lot of Marines are. Tell me that's the target. That's the hill I got to take. And I'm going to go take the hill. I'm going to go. Right. Boom. And then you got to get some of those sages in there, the yellows that are going to make sure, okay, do we have the proper training? We're going to put different teams together to get this stuff done. We're going to collaborate, blah, blah, blah. But then the last one is the engineering phase. All right, we're just going to sustain operations. And then eventually at some point you flatline and you dip down. Now the industry has passed you, which is why a lot of people say, like, BlackBerry went creative destruction. They were so creative to a point where they flatlined and didn't look at the industry and then dipped. And then you have to, I believe BlackBerry's done a really good job in reinventing themselves. Some don't. Like, I'm not really quite too sure that Kodak has really properly reinvented themselves. But they dip down and you have to rebrand, reevaluate, and go through that process. The smart organizations never get to that sustaining operations mode. They do it in certain pieces, but then they go, okay, we need new products. Okay, we need new products. And they keep going through that. They'll be involved. And I think this is where Google does a tremendous job, and probably in many other technology companies, where they have a venture capitalist-like arm, so they can constantly be investing in other startups. And if they go well, then they just bring them back into their ecosystem. So I think that's a great model. But it's interesting to see that path to creative destruction for your organization. Some might go through that in 10 years. Some might go through it in 2 years. Some may never even get to the point of sustaining operations, which is really the majority. They just die off.
Yeah. Well, it's very much about managing that state transition between innovation and, let's call it, maintenance or franchising.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If you only ever have one or the other, then you're probably, especially in the modern age, not long for the world. You have to have a varying amount depending on other factors of both. Well, look, Kodak's a perfect example, dude. They had digital cameras long before anybody. But because they were in franchise mode and the board at large, I don't mean the board of trustees proper, but the board at large didn't see the value in it because they were stuck in a maintenance franchise mindset. They didn't understand how far ahead they were, and they didn't capitalize on it. And now look at them.
Yeah. I mean, think about Blockbuster. They had an opportunity to buy Netflix, and like, nope, no one's ever going to want to do that. They had every single movie title. The internet existed. They could have streamed. And now look at Netflix. And now Netflix has created a whole other genre of things. So don't be so blind to a new entrant that might be doing it a little bit differently. And if you have an opportunity to buy something that might be doing it, sometimes you need to bring in that blood. Now, I am not a big believer in businesses buying other businesses. And mainly that's because I just look at the statistics. 100% of all CEOs believe that they are in the 1/3 of successful, overall transactions of buying another company.
How do you feel about Google buying Mandiant?
I think it was a bad decision. I just go, when you're Google or even Microsoft or Apple, you're telling me you don't have enough funds to develop it yourself. I do not see any value for Google buying Mandiant. I see zero value in that transaction. What did you get? Like Mandiant already kind of sold off the FireEye division. I think they sold it off to Mcafee. Was it Mcafee or?
Mhm.
All right. So that was the intellectual property. Mandiant proper at that point was nothing more than like their incident response. And so you just bought the people. I'm not really quite sure. Haven't followed it much, but in my mind, what Kevin Mandia built from a Mandiant perspective, which was a good purchase for FireEye to buy Mandiant back then, because they needed a incident response team, and that was they needed quick because FireEye was not around long enough in order to develop their own talent and recruit them. Google's can literally start that tomorrow and just say, we're going to have Google Forensic Services team put job offers out there, and they will be able to fill that cheaper and faster than buying Mandiant. That's my opinion. Maybe Mandiant retains some other intellectual property I haven't looked at recently, because I've just, to me, it's a dime a dozen.
It makes me wonder what we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Mandiant found a bunch of stuff wrong with Google services, and so they just decided to buy it so they can get it fixed. I mean, I don't know, right? No idea. But on the surface, I go, I don't know what Mandiant brought to the table that would make me want to purchase it
for $5 billion.
And actually, that's not even that much. Like for Google.
No, for Google, it's nothing.
Hold on. They just made $5 billion right now. I mean, that's literally how long it takes Google to make. Like it's not long.
I totally agree with you. Because it doesn't make rational sense, it makes me wonder what I don't know that would lead somebody to be like, yeah, dude, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, incident response services are definitely needed, but I think Google could have done that in 30 days.
Sure, they could have.
They could have done it in 30 days and much cheaper.
Sure, they could have. 100% agree, man. But the value must be in something we don't know. That's the only thing I can reasonably come up with. I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
obviously.
And for those that haven't gone through like an acquisition, when you start making that intent, and we both kind of it's kind of like dating. Hey, I kind of like you. You kind of like me. Well, let's date. Okay. At that point, you start to open up the kimono, so to speak, and see what's there. Well, when they both kind of said, hey, I think I like kind of what you're doing. Yeah, I kind of think I might want to join you as well. Well, what is there? And during that due diligence piece is what we don't know.
Well, and whatever it is, we know what it's valued at, 5 point something billion.
Yeah.
Like 5.3 or 5.4, I think it was, something like that.
Yeah. Now,
and to finish this thought, what's interesting to me is it wasn't that long ago that Microsoft was courting Mandiant.
See, that would make more sense to me.
It would to me too. But Microsoft just bought Activision Blizzard.
Yeah. That I don't understand.
Well, I do. They got it cheap as fuck.
Yeah, but what did they really get?
Like the second biggest gaming company in the world.
Well, right, but what I mean is, Activision. It's a set of games. The gaming engine that they use, everyone's basically using it at this point. It's not like it's a proprietary gaming engine. And so what are they doing that Microsoft has their own games building thing? Are they thinking, I mean, and maybe I didn't really look at this one as well. Are they thinking that the royalties, which therefore in this case would be the net present value of the royalties for the current games they already have, like buying something like a record label or Michael Jackson stuff, that you're going to get more money off of that in future, like annuity payments. I don't see what they're really getting. They're developers. Microsoft can develop games anytime they want. We've got a home platform, and like they could go down that whole aspect, like what who was it? Was it Nintendo that basically did it at one point or was it Sega that said, hey, we're the only ones that are going to develop games for our platform? It was one
I
of
don't
those
remember
gaming
Sega doing
platforms.
that. Nintendo does a lot of that, but check this out. This will blow your mind.
All right, what do you got?
Do you know what the largest portion of revenue was for Activision, or is at this point?
From from Blizzard's side, or just Activision? Because I would think it's probably still something along the lines of like World of Warcraft, that
Not
recurring
even,
revenue.
not even fucking close, dude. Check this out.
All right, what
A
do you
lot of
got?
people don't realize this. So Activision is Activision Blizzard, okay?
Right.
And before they were owned by Vivendi, and then Vivendi separated. In the course of all that happening, Activision bought King. King is the maker of Candy Crush,
Okay.
the mobile game.
Right.
That is the single biggest revenue generator in their portfolio.
Oh yeah, so it is what I said. It's the recurring revenue of games.
Microtransactions.
Yep. Yeah. So it makes
It's
makes
not
sense.
World of Warcraft. It's not Call of Duty. I mean, they make a shitload of money, but it ain't them. It's fucking Candy Crush.
It doesn't surprise me. It's that aspect. So they've bought something that does, where they believe whatever they purchase, Activision for, they believe that those annuity payments in the future are going to pay off more than if they develop something like Candy Crush today. I mean, that's really why you do that.
Well, and I'll tell you what's interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what's interesting from an analysis standpoint to me, just looking at the data, let alone the financials, is so when you look at a game like Candy Crush that has microtransactions, there's hundreds of millions of daily active users, right? However, it's only like 10% that are referred to as whales because they're spending, I can't imagine this, dude, thousands of dollars a month for each person to play a free game. And that's where all that revenue comes from. It's not from the 150 million other users that only play it for free. It's from the 10 users that pay $10,000 each a month to play a free game.
Dude, it should make perfect sense to you. No, I mean, so let's put it into a different industry context. They're addicts. This is no different than why people continue to do cocaine or heroin or PCP. Like, not everyone that gets that, contrary to what, in my opinion, contrary to what people believe, I don't believe marijuana is the gateway drug. I think they're completely different things. But to me, in a way, marijuana is kind of like that free game. Not everyone's doing heroin. And people who do heroin, they spend a ton of money. Games like Candy Crush, it's like the dopamine effect in those people's brains is the equivalent of doing stuff like heroin. So it makes perfect sense. They're just legalized drug dealers, just doing it via a game.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, man, that's the interesting background.
I mean, it makes sense.
Phil Spector, who runs gaming at Microsoft's a fucking genius.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just wish the Xbox was a little bit better. I'm just not a big fan. I prefer the PlayStation. Like when I'm doing UFC on I prefer the PlayStation, or when I do Madden on the PlayStation. I'm not a big fan of Xbox. Yeah. We all got our preferences.
Makes the world turn.
Yeah. So yeah, I still just find it fascinating. I believe in this particular case, Microsoft just went, we can purchase Candy Crush, and it would take us this many years and this many dollars in order to get the same transaction levels that Candy Crush is getting today. Perfect business sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, they got it for pennies on the dollar, dude.
I can't figure out in a forensics incident response business stream if that's all Mandiant is today as to why Google would purchase that.
Right.
They're not, and I don't know. Well, we can do a quick little Google lookup on this. How much did the Fire IP sell to McAfee?
Oh, I don't remember, man. And it wasn't that long ago, but I don't remember. But yeah, Google buying Mandiant to me is as strange as if Tesla bought a Rose phone.
All right. So check this out. You said Mandiant sold for like 5.7 billion, something like that.
Somewhere in that range.
All right. So check this out, and we'll do it. So Mandiant sold FireEye for 1.2 billion. So we're at, let's just say 7 billion. All right. So here's why I say this is possibly a bad deal. Intel bought McAfee for $14 billion. So cybersecurity endpoint product plus McAfee had a huge incident response like stuff when they did all those things through Foundstone. It was Foundstone, right?
Right.
Foundstone?
Yeah.
So that and a bunch of little others. Intel valued that at 14 billion. So, and that was if I believe that was like in 2010. Yeah, 2010. So in 12 years, FireEye didn't have nearly as many technologies that McAfee did. And they had Mandiant, and it sold for half 12 years later, broken up. That's how devalued endpoint security products have gone, and a consultant-like company. That to me is just, I mean, I would never have paid $14 billion for McAfee. I mean, especially I don't understand why Intel didn't understand that McAfee is the place where hardware technologies like firewalls go to die. And you're now trying to Intel is basically a hardware company. So you think that you're going to try to get them or kill hardware into your hardware product, that's going to be a good thing? I mean, I wouldn't have done it. That's just that never made sense to me as to why they did it. I don't understand it today. Very similar. I haven't looked into and maybe the reasons will come out. I know why Intel wanted to buy McAfee, because the whole things that wound up coming out later, like Spectre and those CPU malware attacks.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right. But it never translated to what they thought it was going to do, and that's why they sold it off. So they bought McAfee for 14 billion. Now let's see. Now this is the great part. Let's see how Intel sells McAfee. What did they do? So they sold McAfee for Intel. It sold for 4.2. So they go and basically they devalued it that quickly. So it went from 2010, sold it in 2016. So they got crushed in that valuation. That's how wrong Intel was with that purchase.
It reminds me of, I'm trying to look it up, man. Do you remember in the mid 2000s, and maybe it was around 2005-ish, what was the big cyber company that IBM bought that they tried to turn into a consulting firm, and then it just fucking died in the vine?
Oh,
they had the Black Ice host-based firewall.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about, because
wasn't it?
No. I know exactly what you're talking about, because it was a vulnerability management company. IBM vulnerability scanner.
I can't think of the name, man. I can't think of the name, because now you never hear about it.
No, because again, because it's
if you say the name, I'll know it. They had a blue logo.
No, it wasn't Tripwire.
No.
I do know exactly what you're talking about, because I used to use them.
Uh-huh.
IBM. Let's just go because this was I know exact IBM purchases vulnerability scanner. That's because it's now called Q Radar.
Right.
ISS.
Yes, that's it. You got it.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
And so how did Intel not learn from that?
You know, and I because they didn't hire me. Like, dude, they need to hire a Michigan Ross grad that understands technology to be the CEO. I'll fix them up. Because I mean, Qualcomm, I think, is still eating their lunch in terms of mobile. So don't know. I mean, IBM is another one of those companies. I just kind of like, I don't understand how they're still making money at this point. I really don't.
Well, and they bought Red Hat a few years ago for what, almost 40 billion.
Yeah. Well,
and Red Hat's killing it.
Well, I mean, that makes sense to me because they had an archaic operating system with AIX and SCO. Like they had both, right? AIX and SCO, and who the hell wants to use that? So you got to move to Linux. Red Hat already had a really good service model, so you could get Red Hat, but if you want help, you got to pay for it. So boom, I mean that made perfect sense to me because from an enterprise perspective, Red Hat was at the time, I believe, the biggest enterprise deployment of Linux because they went during we're going to give you a service fee. You can have it for free, but if you want help in anything, you got to pay for it. I thought that was
right.
I actually think, and that fits what IBM does well because they make hardware. Now they got other stuff, but I don't know of any other acquisition that IBM has really made that has been successful in my lifetime. I can't think of one.
I can't either, dude. I can't either. I'm looking at the Wikipedia list of all their acquisitions.
Oh, dude, it's insane. Look at how many companies they destroyed.
ISS, I haven't thought about that in a long time, dude.
Yeah. It's quite interesting, right? I mean, IBM just does.
And think about that, dude. That was 2006, and IBM paid almost 1.5 billion.
Yeah.
Back then for ISS.
I believe, and I don't know this to be true, but I bet you IBM makes more money off of licensing their patents.
They have to, dude.
They've got so many patents. It's insane about what they're. I mean, that is what IBM does quite well. They definitely are thinkers. If you need to solve a problem, I would hire IBM consultants. I would. They can solve any. I believe, especially I still believe if you're like a senior fellow at IBM, like you are crazy smart when it comes to marrying technology and business. Like they may not have the technology at IBM, but they can solve the problem for you. I have yet to meet a senior fellow that I was just like in awe of. I mean, every single one of them. All right. I've yet to meet one that I wasn't in awe of.
I knew you meant.
Yeah. It's just those people, and it's hard to get like to that senior fellow at IBM. Like it's
right.
I believe that's still the job titles that they call them.
I have no idea. I don't know that I know anybody that works at IBM.
Yeah.
I know some people that work for Intel, but I don't know that I know anybody that works for IBM.
So check this out. All right. So I'm at Fixmo. And won a golf tournament. Like it was not even close. I was the worst golfer in this foursome. So that tells you how good this foursome was. We had a guy from Criterion, which is it's a pretty big system integrator.
Mm-hmm.
Guy from Intel, a guy from Red Hat, and me at Fixmo. And so it's just so, to me, I'm like, all right, like these are like, awesome. What I would like to say, the best technology minds in DC at that time. In that particular part of the foursome, I was definitely the leader. But in terms of golf, I was the worst because at that time my handicap was like a 12. The guy from Criterion was a scratch golfer. He was a 0 handicap. The guy from Intel was he said he was like a 10. dude, he was definitely killing it. The guy from Red Hat was just killing it. And I'm like, the only thing that I had on some of them was I could putt, but those guys, everything else, they were just like mashing it. You had all these little different things in these like charity golf tournaments like this. And so one of them was, well, you purchase all the different cheats, which is so funny. So you apply that to like games. Oh, I'm going to buy the cheat codes for this. In this case, hey, $20, whatever. So the guy Brett, who worked for Criterion at the time, who's big guy, and he could just maul that golf ball. So one of them was you can tee off from the ladies' tee. He did it on a par 5. Okay. So that took the par 5 from like hitting back where we normally have to hit from the blue tees, which would have been like a 500-yard par 5 to like a 300, and drove the green. So we got like a double eagle on that hole because he drove the green, and now all of us get a chance to putt. So, we decided who was going to lead the putting each time. I was the best putter, so I always putted last. I didn't even get a chance to putt because, the guy from Red Hat read it from the other two guys. So we get a double eagle on a par 5. Like, we wind up winning that golf tournament being 23 strokes under par, which everyone's like, you cheated. I'm like, we didn't cheat. Like this guy, like Brett he hit the golf ball. Like he didn't even use his driver on that one. He used his 3-wood and hit that thing 300 yards. But it's just funny to me that here we are all in technology, and we're talking about right now, Red Hat, IBM. No one talks about Fixmo anymore because BlackBerry owns all that tech. But it's kind of funny to me as to how things go. And that was like I think I was in 2010. Mm-hmm. The missus recently broke the trophy when we were moving. She dropped it. I had to glue it back together. She's like, why is that so important? I'm like, you don't understand. I've won other golf tournaments like this, but nothing like being 23 strokes under. Like the next closest was like 12.
Right.
And the only thing that we all had in common is we knew Brett, who was the guy from the system integrator. That's the only thing we had in common. I didn't know those guys ever. I'd never met them before. It was fun. Not that you'd like to play golf, but
I've never played a round in my life, dude.
I don't hold that against you.
I've just never been in a place in time where I was like, yeah, shit, I want to go play some golf.
It's funny because as much as I enjoy playing golf, I'm coming to find out if it was going to be like, hey, I'm hanging out with some 2 other friends or 3 other friends, no big deal. But I don't want to play on the weekend. Dude, to play on a weekend, it's like 5 hours. I'm just I don't want to be, we talk about constraints, I don't want to be locked in to doing something for 5 hours.
Right.
Now, I don't have a problem if I'm going to go do that like in Scotland, because I have never played golf in Scotland, which is where golf basically was, created. Mm-hmm. That I will do once.
Right.
But I'd much rather just go do jiu-jitsu
for an hour and then still have 4 hours left over to go do something else. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm with you, dude.
Work on the show, read, research, write, do stuff for, the distillery, do stuff for my employer, and anything. Like I still have I could get all that stuff done and still probably have an hour left over if I just played a round of golf on a Saturday.
That's right. Yeah, totally agree, man. 100%.
I just I loved playing golf. It's just not there anymore. And I don't care about the price. I'll go play, pay $50 to go play a round of golf on a weekend. I prefer doing it during the week because that same $50, I'm only paying like $20. But even still, I don't, even during the week where I could possibly get in 18 holes in like maybe 3.5 hours, that's still 3.5 hours. I feel like that's still too long. Like I just, I don't have as much enjoyment in there as I do with other things. It's funny to me because I would never, if we go back 10 years, I don't think I would ever have said that. I would not have imagined saying that. And I can't remember who said it. Some pretty, I will say somewhat well-known philosopher or business person said that you can reinvent yourself every 5 years. Actually, it was John Danaher. So I was right, famous philosopher, because he's more of a philosopher, in my opinion. But he said you can reinvent yourself every 5 years. I believe you can reinvent yourself every 3. And that's by going through. And that's by going through. And we've talked about like my philosophy in 2% improvement month over month. 37 months, you have improved 100%. Therefore, to me, you could reinvent yourself every 37 months. I don't think it needs to take 5 years. I think it takes 5 years if you just want to be average in reinventing yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're playing golf for 5-6 hours on a Saturday, sure. But if you're willing to trade that off, then yeah, that's how you get it down to 3. Exactly.
Yeah. And I didn't get any complaints from Stony or anyone today, so the audio must be quite good.
There you go.
So
progress.
But hey, eventually I'll be able to be a sound engineer. Be like Pete. I heard from that guy the other day. I don't know if I replied to him.
I talked to him a couple weeks ago.
Let's see if I replied to him. I don't even remember. Oh yeah. He's like, how's it going? I'm like, hey, John, like a villain. He's looking for a new job. I replied again. And he said,
yeah,
still.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I love that guy though. He's he was a lot of fun. Too bad I couldn't get him over to Silent Circle when we had that opportunity.
That worked out.
Probably only had him for a couple of months, and then we all got laid off anyway because of those nice, lovely decisions. This is another reason why don't ever trust a person that just that wants to work in hardware technology, like a firewall company. Just putting it out there.
Well, what we needed was a leader that understood how to manage the state transition from innovation to product to franchising, and we did not have that.
No, we did. They just didn't want to give me the job. Just calling it how I see it. And look, here's the thing. It couldn't have ended up any worse.
That's true. That is true.
When you look back at it, hey, why not take a look? And here's the funny thing about, now you take a look at who and what companies are that, those people that were some of the big investors in Silent, who they're investing in now. Those companies are killing it. Not one of those CEOs, I believe, is older than 40.
Right.
They are killing it. Dragos being one of those. Like, they are just from like an industrial control system security. Killing it. So, hey, kudos to them. They figured out what not to do, and figured out which companies to invest in. I think they've got several companies in their portfolio that are doing quite well. Hats off to them. Yeah. Happy for them. So anyway, all right, my friend, anything else to close it out today?
I have nothing further from the floor.
All right. Well, my friend, as always, it's a pleasure. Glad you're able to join once again. Who knows what we'll talk about next week? You never know. And we'll see where it goes. But as always, I appreciate you coming on and talking. I wish it was a little bit more often than once a week.
Maybe we'll find a way.
You never know. All right, everyone. Take care. Have a great week.
Cheers. Take care. Thanks.
Bye.